Does education levels affect employment rates in Canada? I chose this topic because education is something that affects many people. I wanted to find out if having higher education really helps people get jobs. My project looks at how many people are working in Canada and compares that to how much education people have. I used secondary data from Stats Canada to investigate if education levels impact how many people in Canada have jobs, and down below is a link provided where I've gotten all my data from. Section 1, Dependent Variables. For my dependent variable, I chose the employment rate. This measures the percentage of working age Canadians who have jobs. I chose this because it clearly shows how many successful people are finding jobs. My data is also from 2010 to 2020. It also shows that higher percentages mean more people working and lower percentages mean more people without jobs. Section 2, Independent Variables. I chose 2 independent variables. First, the percentage of the population with post-secondary education. This shows how many people finished college or university. Higher education might help people get jobs, so I wanted to test that. My second variable is the percentage of people with only a high school diploma. And it also shows that lower education levels might make it harder to find jobs. And I've got both my variables off from the same link that I provided in the first slide. This is my data table. So employment rate, this is my employment rate graph and analysis. The mean was 78.4%, the median was 78.5%, the range was 3.5%, and the standard deviation was 0.9. This shows that the employment rate stayed pretty stable over the years. Post-secondary percentage graphs and my analysis. For post-secondary education, the mean was 61.6%, the median was 61.5%. The range was 3.5%, and the standard deviation was 1.2. This tells me that the post-secondary education slowly increased over time but stayed consistent. This is my high school only percentage graphs and analysis. For people with only high school education, the mean was 26%, and the data stayed stable too, with the median being 26%, range being 2.5%, and the standard deviation being 0.8%. This shows that fewer people relied on just high school education over the years. 2 variable measures with linear models and correlation and analysis. So these are my scatter plots. I created scatter plots to compare my 2 independent variables to employment rate. In the first scatter plot over here, the relationship between post-secondary education and employment rate was very weak, with the R-squared value of 0.012, and the second scatter plot over here was comparing high school only percentages to employment rate, which showed no clear relationship with an R-squared of just 0.007. For my first graph over here, this means that the increase in post-secondary education did not strongly affect employment rates in this data set. And in my second scatter plot below, it showed that changes in high school only percentages didn't have much impact on the employment rate during these years, 2010 and 2020, in between. This is my comparison table. This table compares both models. Both trend lines were negative and both had weak or no correlation. Overall, education levels did not strongly affect the employment rate. And this is my outlier analysis. In 2020, the employment rate dropped because of COVID-19. I identified 2020 as an outlier. Removing it slightly improved the model, but not much. The z-scores showed that 2020 was much lower than normal years. Classification of correlation type. Both models were classified as common cause relationships. This means that employment rates and education levels are likely both influenced by bigger factors like the economy, industry needs, or like government policies. Employment rate versus post-secondary the correlation type was common cause. The explanation was education alone doesn't directly cause employment, but both may be influenced by common factors like economic conditions, job availabilities, and government policies, like I said earlier. For model 2, my employment rate versus high school only, the correlation type was also common cause. Lower education doesn't directly cause lower employment. The other factors like industry demands and economic health likely impact both variables together. Conclusions of linear models. Both independent variables showed almost no impact on the employment rate in the years analyzed. Removing the outlier year slightly improved the trendline fit, but did not result in any meaningful correlation. The independent variable did not have a significant effect on the dependent variable. The employment rate remained stable even as education levels changed. Other factors like economic conditions, job market shifts, or external events like the pandemic likely influenced employment more than education level alone. During this time period between 2010 and 2020, overall, the two variable analysis showed that education level alone could not be reliably predicted on employment rates in Canada. Bias in analysis. There were a few biases in my study that I think I noticed. First, I only used national data only, so I didn't look at individual provinces. Employment rates also depend on other factors like economic health and not just education. COVID-19 distorted my 2020 data. Lastly, percentages don't show the types of jobs people have. Conclusion. To conclude, I found that education levels did not strongly affect employment rates in Canada from 2010 to 2020. The employment rate stayed stable and COVID-19 caused a drop in 2020. Overall, other factors beside education are likely influencing employment rates. That's it.